On this next to last evening of our class on self-completeness through God, we must make sure that we have covered every phase of the work so that you are left with a clear understanding of a principle. And if we are not clear on that, let us have a period after our meditation and write out any questions that still remain, so that tonight and tomorrow night everything will be clear. And this question, if you are asked to treat for a patient, is there any requirement on the part of the so-called patient, such as meditation or receptivity? The first responsibility is with the practitioner, not with the patient. The master asked, "Do you believe that I can do this?" And he said to the disciples when they failed to heal, that if they had more faith, he did not put the responsibility on the patient, except that the patient was expected, in asking for help, to have faith that they would receive it. Now, I doubt very much if all of those who ask us for help have that much faith, because too many people ask for metaphysical help and are also taking medicines and other forms of materia medica. So if the question were asked them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" in order to be truthful, they would have to say, "No, I don't believe you can do it, I merely hope so." No person who turns to spiritual help while they are using material means has any real belief that they're going to get the help. They have a hope, and as a rule a dim hope, not a very expectant one. The person who believes that they are going to get the help through spiritual means would not at the same time be relying on material means. Nor would they expect spiritual means to help material means, nor would they expect material means to help spiritual means. There is a sharp line of distinction, and we speak often of the failure of metaphysics to bring about its result, and I wonder if sometimes we aren't a little too severe with metaphysics, for the simple reason that metaphysics does not get the degree of faith, even from those who ask for the help, that it should have. You see, materia medica healing in any form, whether it's through medicine, surgery, lights, baths, vitamins, minerals, diet, massages, bone adjustments, all of this is predicated on the belief of a physical body requiring correction. Spiritual help is a complete denial of this. Spiritual help claims that since God, Spirit, is the only creator, that a spiritual being and a spiritual body is the only creation. And it approaches the healing work from that basis. Now, when a person says, I would like spiritual help, and working from the basis that they have a material body that they wish to have spiritually helped, they are not single-minded, they are double-minded. Not intentionally, not willfully, ignorantly, of course, but the effect is the same. The result is the same. It is true that if a person with no knowledge of metaphysics were in a hospital or very ill at home and not getting the result from their medical help, and someone asked them to try metaphysics or to have spiritual help, it is natural that they at that stage could not be expected to understand or have enough faith to rely completely on spiritual means. And the practitioner could give that one help, a matter of, I believe, but help my unbelief, and give that patient some measure of help until the patient said, I have felt something, I can put my faith, my reliance on this. But a true student, one who has been in truth for a year, 2, 3, 5, to be dividing their allegiance between material means and spiritual, is standing in their own light, walking their own progress, not only in understanding, but actually in healing as well. That is one of the reasons for a great deal of the lack of healing. The fact that the patient is depending on material means and spiritual and getting nowhere with either one. The practitioner is in a peculiar position. The practitioner knows that a beginner could receive a healing even though they might still be depending to some extent on their material help because they have not yet been lifted to a place of reliance or confidence. But the practitioner also knows that when a true student comes and asks for help and is at the same time using materia medica, the practitioner doesn't want to say, I won't give it to you, but inwardly they know right well that your chances of getting it are not too good. Not too good. And that you yourself are preventing it. You're dividing your allegiance between the spirit and material means. So every student must come to a place eventually where they choose whether they're going to serve God or Mammon. If they decide on materia medica, then they should have the best materia medica help available, put their whole heart and soul and confidence in it, and every bit of money that's available. On the other hand, if they've come to a place of decision and decided that they will rely on spiritual means, then the thing for them to do is put materia medica behind them, put their heart, soul, and faith into their spiritual treatment or spiritual lesson or spiritual reading and spiritual meditation until their healing takes place. Now, when a practitioner is called upon for help by a student who is really a student of the Spirit and not dividing their allegiance, then the practitioner does not look to the patient for any cooperation at all. That is, all they ask is that the patient relax and let the practitioner do their work. This means, of course, that the patient is relaxing, is reading, is keeping their mind stayed on God, but not giving themselves treatments for whatever the ailment may be. Once they've turned the case over to the practitioner, let the practitioner carry the responsibility while the patient merely rests, relaxes, reads, meditates, goes to a class or a lecture, whatever they like, or if they so desire, take a vacation, a rest. But always, always, with their full and complete reliance on the spiritual means. Then the practitioner has very little difficulty, because one with God is a majority. One with God is a majority. One practitioner, consciously one with God, can bring out healing without any question of doubt. But there must be a yielding. There must be a giving on the part of the patient, so that their confidence and their faith is in the spiritual approach to healing. It has been said over and over again that a grateful patient is a receptive patient to truth. And that is true, not because of the money that may change hands, but that the money that changes hands is an indication, an outer indication of an inner faith. Nobody pays out money for something they have no faith in. Nobody in their right mind would pay out money for something in which they had no confidence. Nobody could feel grateful for something in which they had no confidence. And so, whether it's the paying of money or some other form of appreciation or gratitude, is an outer sign of an inner confidence in the healing method or in the healing practice. In other words, when a person comes and asks for help and has very little hope, very little confidence in the result, so this thought of being grateful, appreciative, rarely enters their mind. Oh yes, if I get healed, I'll be grateful. Of course, that's bargaining with God. That's like tithing 10% to get back 90%. That doesn't work. But when a person comes to a spiritual faith, a spiritual religious teaching, and feels within their own being, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I have confidence in. This is what I know is right. They come in the same spirit of gratitude and appreciation as a person goes to a friend in whom they have confidence, with whom they wish association or communion, with love in their heart, gratefulness, appreciation, friendship, and so forth. And so it is, when any individual has faith in metaphysical or spiritual means of healing, you can tell it in their whole attitude. And when not, you can tell it too. Now, the grateful heart, the appreciative one, isn't the one that's paying money in and of itself. It is the one who in some way indicates their faith and reliance on the spiritual means. Do you follow that? Do you see the difference between just paying money for money's sake, or the fact that the payment of money is but a token, a symbol of what is going on inside. Well, in the same way, a person who has ever felt a touch of spiritual healing could never have reliance on material means, and their entire thought would be in the direction of more light, more light, more light, more realization, more realization. And so the material sense of existence and the material remedies would fall away from them. Now, it is particularly true in the metaphysical field that the reliance has not been fully placed on spiritual means. In the Christian Science field, it is much more true, or rather there is a greater reliance on spiritual means alone, for the simple reason that 9 practitioners out of 10 wouldn't even give you a treatment if they knew that you were relying in any way on material means. It is contrary to the entire teaching of Christian Science to permit a patient to indulge both materia medica and the Christian Science treatment, and is probably one of the reasons why they get much better results in their healing work than is true outside the Christian Science movement, because even with only the same degree of understanding on the part of the practitioner as another practitioner, they would get better results because of the patient's own complete reliance and faith on spiritual means. And so watch this very carefully. There is apt to be a sense that we are human beings, that we have material bodies, and that we are merely going to God through truth to get some help for our material bodies and our material pocketbooks and our material modes of life. And that isn't true. That's having a double vision. When we come to truth, our main goal is to give up our material mode of living, our material dependencies, our material way of life, in order to enter the kingdom of God. The Master made it very clear that you cannot have both kingdoms. My kingdom is not of this world. And you can't have this world and my kingdom. You can't have mother, brother, father, and sister and my kingdom. You can't have all of these material things of life, material sense of life, and my kingdom. And that is the distinction that everyone must understand. Of course, it doesn't mean that we give up eating, drinking, sleeping, marrying, or any of the other so-called human activities. But it means that we give up the material sense of them and gain the spiritual sense of them. And in giving up the material sense, we give up all reliance on anything that exists in the world of effect. Our complete reliance must be on the world of cause. In other words, when we say, "Thy grace is sufficient for me," we cannot at the same time go out and take an aspirin tablet. We have made a liar of our own statement that thy grace is sufficient. What we meant was thy grace and an aspirin tablet is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and vitamins is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and something else is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and next month's rent is sufficient for me. In the spiritual way of life, you give up this outer dependence and literally, and I say literally live as though thy grace was sufficient for me, and then let the human world unfold as it will. You'll be satisfied with it, no doubt about that. You'll never be dissatisfied with the spiritual kingdom. You will never be unhealed as long as you have your complete reliance on the spiritual kingdom. But you must come to a place, we must come to a place of utter and complete reliance on thy grace. Now, if we are having financial difficulties and say, thy grace is sufficient for me and I need $100 too, we are double-minded and we are sacrificing our demonstration. If our fault is a physical one and we say, thy grace is sufficient for me, thy law, thy healing grace, the power of thy Spirit is sufficient for me, plus a chiropractic adjustment, you see where that leaves us, don't you? We have made a liar of our own statement. We have contradicted our own faith. We have lost our faith. We have acknowledged to ourselves that actually we never had the faith that we claimed. And that's the truth. And that's the truth. We haven't the faith that we claim until we come to the place of realization that I really mean it, Father. Thy grace is sufficient, and I'm not looking outside my own being. I'm not looking out here to person, place, or thing, circumstance, or condition. I'm not looking out here to a remedy. Why, Admiral Byrd was faced with that situation when he was way out at that point farthest out, I think 200 miles from his men, all alone, with a broken bone of some kind. I've forgotten whether it was his leg or his arm. And he had the alternative of picking up his telegraph key and sending for the doctor and people to come and help him. The other alternative was that he had just discovered that God is mind. And he thought that if God is mind, certainly I know I have a mind, so mind is right here. That means God is right here. Then God should be able to do this healing for me. And so Admiral Byrd lied down and waited for the healing and woke up the next day with it and didn't have to send for his men and experienced his first spiritual healing. And that was a man who was not a truth student, who for the first time in his life had caught a tiny glimpse that God is mind. Well, that is where we are. Thy grace is sufficient for me. And if you call on one of our practitioners for help in that faith that God's grace is sufficient and that you are relying on the practitioner's realization of that truth, the practitioner's confidence, the practitioner's consciousness of God's presence, then the healing must take place. Sometimes it's quick and sometimes it's slow, but neither the patient nor the practitioner are the determining influence in that. There are sometimes very good reasons for slow healing. And usually the reason is that the patient may gradually come further and further into the orbit of God so that when the healing does take place, it is more than just a physical change. It is an opening of the spiritual centers, the divine consciousness. But when the patient calls for help and the practitioner in full faith and confidence gives all of understanding and all of prayer and all of treatment of which they're capable, and the patient themselves is thwarting the results by withdrawing themselves from that spiritual embrace through the use of material means, then you either have no healing, or a much delayed healing, or a healing that has no other consequence than just physical welfare as against physical ill. So the responsibility rests primarily with the practitioner if the patient has fulfilled the price of being a patient. And that price is, do you believe that I can do this thing? Do you have faith as a grain of mustard seed? And if so, the healing must automatically follow. The Master says, leave all and follow me. Leave your nets. You hear that? Leave your nets. You know what the nets were to those fishermen? That was their livelihood. That was their provision for their families. That was the evidence of their love for their family. That was the evidence of their care. That was the only way in which they had for caring and providing for their families. And yet the Master said, leave all that and follow me. Very daring thing to do. Very daring thing to say. Give up the only means you have of supporting your family and follow me. There's something more important in the world, he must have meant, than supporting your family. Or maybe I can show you a higher way of supporting your family. He meant something of a very drastic nature when he said, leave those nets and follow me. I will make you fishers of men. Let us think on that for a little while. Or let's think of our position. You see, just for the past few moments, we have been talking about just leaving an aspirin tablet, or a cold tablet, or a flu tablet, or a little food value. Now we are taken back to the shores of Galilee, and we're hearing the Master say to us, leave your method of earning a livelihood. Leave your way of supporting and supplying your family. Leave that material way of showing your love to your families, your care and your support, and follow me. Follow me, the Spirit. And think what would happen if that remark were addressed to us. Think how shocking it is right now to be asked to leave the medicine bottle alone, much more to be asked to leave our work, our incomes, and our present method of supporting a family. You know, whatever occupation we have, whatever it is that we're doing to support our families, have you ever stopped to think that there's a better way and a higher way and a more spiritual way? There is. And evidently the Master intended to show that way to the disciples, because he surely didn't mean that they should desert their families and leave them without support. He certainly never meant to break up those homes and put them on relief or make them dependent on someone else. The Master couldn't function from any such plane of consciousness as to cause loss or lack or limitation to anyone. So when he said, give up your material way of earning a living, and then after the resurrection proved again that when they went back to the material way of fishing, they still couldn't do as well as when he said, cast your nets on the other side, on the spiritual side. Now that's all that is being said to us today. in spiritual work, give up those material resources, give up those material remedies, give up those material reliances, and follow me. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. I will do that. Let us get this clear. I will make you fishers of men. Let us say that. I will make you fishers of men. Which is more potent, a medicine bottle or I? The dollars in the bank or I? Now, do you know that the whole meaning of this class, all of this week, has been to turn us into the realization of our self-completeness in God, so that we would know that I am more important than dollar bills. I am more important than medicines. I am more important than bone setting. The whole activity of our work here this week has been to reveal our self-completeness in God, so that we could have our complete reliance on me. Follow thou me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow the I within you, the Father within. Follow this Christ, this principle, this Spirit that abides within your own being, and see if in relinquishing your material mode of living, your material dependencies in life, see if a higher, finer, more abundant, more prosperous, more joyous spiritual life and health and supply, see if that doesn't unfold. And there, you see, is the culmination of all our work. There is the point to which it has led. Can we leave all of our material dependencies? Can we leave the dependency on our families for love, justice, mercy, and expect it only of the Father? You remember that has been brought out all this week in that booklet, Love and Gratitude. Can we turn from expecting justice from the judge and jury and expect justice from the Father within our own being? Can we turn from expecting gratitude, reward, recognition, appreciation from our employers or employees or members of our family, and say, no longer do I seek my good in you, but in the Father within me. Me. I will follow the I, or me. I will follow now the Spirit within me, and not the personal sense without. And as we come to this place where we either say to the Master, no, go on for a season, I must catch more fish for my family. Go on to the Master while I stay behind here and rely on human beings for recognition and reward and cooperation and gratitude. Go on for a season while I depend on medicines. Or have we reached that point of consciousness that the disciples had reached, when without question they lay down their nets? Matthew left his job as tax collector to follow me, to follow the spiritual impulse of your own being. Remember now, the Master really wasn't asking these men to follow Jesus. He was asking them to follow the teaching that the I within is the Messiah. No one is asking you or your patients or your students to follow Joel Goldsmith. or to follow the infinite way, but to follow me. I, the Spirit, at the center of your being. Leave your nets and follow the I. Leave your material modes and means and follow the I, the Spirit within you, the divine Christ, the Son of God, within your own being, and trust it rather than trust something out here in this external realm, or somebody out here in this external realm. Now we are at that point in this week's class where some of us at least are being called upon to answer that call. Some of us have not yet left our fishing net. Some have not yet left their reliance, confidence in material means and in material beings to rely completely on the Father within. Probably that is why we are here in this class. You see, in coming here, you knew in advance that you were going to secure nothing that could be seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled. You were going to receive nothing in the external realm, not even a certificate or a title. No, none of those things, nor a license, nor an authorization of any kind. No, you came here knowing full well that you were coming for what the world would call an intangible, something that you could never handle, never see, taste, touch, smell. And what is that you came here knowing in advance that that was what you were seeking? The invisible. That which cannot be seen, that which cannot be heard, and that which cannot be known. And yet you came here to see and hear and know. To see that which cannot be seen, to hear that which cannot be heard, to know that which cannot be known. And so I say to you that you must not be surprised if I say to you, now, in turn, your complete reliance must be on what you found here. Nothing. He hangeth the world on nothing. And so, as you go forth from this class, you must really realize that what you came to get was nothing, and you're going away with it. Yes, you're going to get just what you came here for. Nothing that you will ever see or hear or taste or touch or smell, but of this I'm sure, that you feel it and see it and hear it and know it, even though there isn't any it to see and hear and feel and taste and know. Oh yes. Because that is the lesson of our self-completeness in God, in the invisible power, not the visible. We are here to learn of an invisible power, of, to the world, an unknown power. What separated not only the disciples, but the followers of the Master from the other Hebrews? Only the fact that the other Hebrews couldn't see, hear, taste, touch, or smell what it was that the disciples and the Hebrew Christians, Jewish Christians, were following. It was foolishness to them. Foolishness. How can you follow something that nobody knows anything about? And then these followers of the Master would smile, not know anything about it. Oh, we know all about it. Well, what is it? Where is it? Let me see it. Let me touch it. No, it's a glint in the eye. Oh, no, that's foolishness. That's foolishness. And yet that was the truth. That was the truth. They saw something in the Master. They felt something in the Master. They felt something in their association with him that satisfied, so that they too could say, we do not live by bread alone. We are receiving an inner grace, an inner meat, inner wine, inner water. They knew what the Master meant when he said, eat my body, drink my blood. They knew right well that he wasn't preaching cannibalism. Oh, yes. They knew what the others could never understand. And so it is, yes, I'm thinking of the story of the cup, the glass that the Master drank from, that was embodied in that chalice. And in his book, Mr. Costain says that when a person of spiritual vision came into the darkened room where that glass was, they saw a light all around the rim of the glass. But the other Hebrews, those of material sense, who were not followers of the Master, who had not become Christians, when they came in, they saw an ordinary drinking glass. And they wondered why so much fuss was being made about it, and so many people were willing to die for it. Well, in the same way, we have called attention to the fact that although the Master walked the earth after the crucifixion, that according to testimony, only about 500 people saw him. Out of all the thousands that walked those roads, out of all the thousands in Jerusalem, 500 saw him. Those 500 saw the invisible and the intangible, the human sense. They saw that which human beings can never see. I see we who have touched, even this hem of the Master's robe of the Spirit, when we are ill, we require nothing that the world can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. We see and feel something in a spiritual treatment that has more power to it than all of the medicines ever made. In the same way, when the world is threatened with atomic bombs, those who have tasted one drop of spiritual life and love and truth, they're not out looking for bomb shelters or for cabins up in Arkansas. No, because they feel an invisible security, an invisible safety. We call that the safety and security in God. That's part of our self-completeness in God, that we walk around in an eternal bomb shelter all the time. An eternal bomb shelter surrounds us. What is that? Now just think of the 91st Psalm. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Where is the secret place of the Most High? Is there such a place? Is it a place at all? Consciousness. Those who live in the consciousness of God's presence, none of these evils shall come nigh their dwelling place. Those who live in the awareness of God's presence. Then awareness must be more powerful than lions and adders and all of the ills of human experience. An awareness must be greater than all of the evils of the world. Think of that. Now that is the message of the infinite way. And that is the message, actually, of any spiritual teaching. Any spiritual teaching is a revelation that a state of spiritual awareness of God's consciousness is greater protection than a bomb shelter, that an awareness of God's presence is a greater remedial agency than medicines and manipulations and surgery. It's a strange thing, but it's true, that at this period of our experience, we are being told to leave our nets, leave our material means of sustenance, our material means of maintenance, our material means of livelihood, our material means of living. Think of it. We are told to leave our material means of living and follow what? The secret place of the Most High. Follow me. In other words, let me, the I, be your fish, your load, and your protection, and your healing agency. When the Master healed, he used no remedies. It was a complete reliance on me. And do you believe that I can do this thing? Oh, if you had faith as a grain of mustard seed, this whole mountain would disappear. Yes, not only a fever, not only a cold, this whole mountain, not just a little lump, this whole mountain would disappear. In what? In faith, in me, in the invisible, in to sense the intangible, to that which you can never handle with the external senses. Every move that the Master made throughout his 3 years of ministry was a lesson in a complete reliance on that which the world knows not of. Do you remember the 3 temptations? Turn a stone into bread? No, we don't live by bread. We live by the Word of God. Do you see that? All the way through his ministry. Shall we go to the city and get you some meat? No, I have meat that ye know not of. I can give you water, living waters. Where from? You have no bucket to draw it with. I don't need a bucket. The water I'm talking about is invisible. You can't see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, or smell it. How do we know it exists? How can we have confidence in it? Ah, there comes the secret. There comes the division. If you cannot feel an inner rightness about this message, if you cannot feel an inner confidence in a medicine that you will never see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, if you cannot have a complete faith and confidence in me, in the I within your being, if you cannot accept this statement that I am come that ye might be fulfilled and completely rely on I, say it, I. If you cannot come to a place where you believe that I am come that ye might be fulfilled medically, mentally, morally, financially, then the thing to do is leave this work for a season. Go back to the material medical world until a greater sense of awareness comes in, because you'll only tear yourself between the two. A double-minded man cannot get anywhere, and he only brings confusion upon himself. Either feel the love and feel the confidence in a divine power within you, and then be willing, with faith, to prove it and see it come through into expression, or leave it for a season, come back to it again at another time when something comes up in life to rouse that faith. You see, that is the answer to the whole of the spiritual life. The Master, it is true, walked up and down the shores of Galilee, walked up and down the Holy Land, all the way through. But actually, he didn't proselyte. Actually, he didn't make speeches to whip anybody up into coming and believing in him. So far as the records show, He walked the Holy Lands. He sat in the mountains and talked to the multitudes that gathered there. I don't believe he sent for them. He just talked to those who gathered. And I'm sure that in those multitudes there must have been some to ridicule, to doubt, to have unbelief, to be unable to grasp the vision, like Nicodemus. There are probably millions of Nicodemuses in the world, and for them, this work has no appeal. This work has appeal only for those who respond with some measure of love, trust, confidence. I don't know whether it was today or yesterday that I brought out here that a center like this stands as a testimony to the love and devotion to God of somebody or other. Usually it's the leader, and usually the leader finds one or two or three to share in that devotion to some extent, seldom to the same extent as the leader. The leader puts their whole life and soul and mind and body into it. Why? Because of an edifice? Hardly. To make a living? I doubt it. It is that intense recognition of the Christ and a desire to impart to others that which can't be imparted, that which has to be seen, heard by the individual themselves. But that love and that desire comes, and that love fills a place, and then those are drawn to it who have some measure of capacity to discern the Christ. Who do men say that I am? O Hebrew prophet resurrected. Whom do ye say that I am? Thou art the Christ. Ah, yes. The moment you have enough spiritual vision in you to say, yes, this center stands for the Christ or truth or love, or this leader is expressing a divine consciousness of love, an intangible, in other words, then you are ready for the divine unfoldment of the Christ in you. I think back on a Thanksgiving service when I was reading in Riker Island Prison in New York in the Christian Science services. And in the morning, that one religious group had met, and there was fruit and candies given out and nuts, and then the next religious group met, and something else was to be given out. And we were the third group, and the young man who went through the prison cells and so forth, announcing that it was time for Christian Science services, but they don't give any candy and fruit. Well, it's true, we didn't give any candy and fruit, but our chapel was packed jam full all the way to the back of the room, because we were giving something, but something that you couldn't eat with the teeth, with the mouth. You couldn't digest with the digestive organs. But evidently there were enough in that prison who knew that we were giving wine and water and bread and meat, even though it was invisible. Well, of course, you who come to this center, you also don't get banquets and material loaves and fishes, and that isn't what you come here for, and you don't get it. You come because of an invisible thing that you feel, an invisible touch that you sense, and you understand that to be the Christ. But now the question comes whether or not that registers sufficiently within your being to say, but that must be my sole reliance. At one point or another, I must leave my nets. I must give up every material approach to life and see the entire picture from a spiritual standpoint, so that in following the Master, I leave my aspirin bottles behind and say, I believe that I am come that ye might be fulfilled. And so you turn in faith and confidence and hope through an inner conviction, not because somebody sits up here and tells it to you. Nobody can give you faith. That's something that springs up within you. And when it does, then you say, henceforth my faith is not in the visible realm, but in the eye of my being. Not only the eye of my practitioner, not only the eye of my leader. Oh, no. I am come within you that ye might be fulfilled. And as your faith and hope grows in the infinite invisible, as you come now to appreciate those statements, he that is within me is greater than he that is in the world. He performeth that which is given me to do. And you commence to understand this reliance on a completely invisible thing. So invisible that if the rest of the world knew what you were relying on, it might think you crazy. It would. It would. It does. It does. Yes, show them the tangible. Show them the dollar bills. Show them the surgery and their faith, and they think that's common sense. But the Hebrews who followed the Master didn't have common sense. It wasn't common sense to leave their fishes, to leave off fishing, to follow him. It wasn't common sense to answer yes when he said, do you have faith to believe that I can raise you from the dead? Do you have faith to believe that I can restore these limbs from their paralysis? Do you see that? It isn't common sense. It's an uncommon sense. It's a divine wisdom that enables a person to say, yes, I have left all to follow the invisible, the Christ, the Master within me. I have left all to follow the vision that the man in the street has never seen and will never see. Think of the faith that it took on the part of the Christians who allowed themselves to be thrown into lions' cages, lions' arenas. You know, they must have been seeing an immortal life beyond what they knew was to be their immediate death. If they hadn't had that vision, they could never have taken that kind of punishment. Think of John in prison, Peter in prison, and singing. They must have seen something beyond the terrors of a prison. They must have seen something in the invisible realm that held out a greater hope and a greater promise than even freedom. People have given up their freedom for this vision. People have given up their human sense of life. As a matter of fact, the Master so clearly said, if you don't lose your life, you won't find it. Now remember, your physical sense of life may be dependent on medicines or surgery or adjustments or vitamins, but you'll never find your spiritual sense of life while you are leaning on that material prop. Too many people have tried it and failed. Too many people have said, I tried Christian Science, oh, I wrote Silent Unity, but I didn't get any benefit. I'd like to ask 99% of them how much faith they actually had in those treatments and what material remedies they gave up in order to place their faith in those spiritual means. Because I know, after all these years, I know of too many people who have been healed in Christian Science, in unity, through spiritual leaders and teachers out in the world of unorganized spiritual religious activities. I know of too many such healings to doubt the efficacy of it. And so when I hear of lack of healing, I'm more apt to doubt the faith and single-mindedness of those who have turned. Well, that doesn't mean that there aren't some who have given their entire faith and reliance and confidence and have not yet made their demonstration. That is true. There are some who have thrown their entire weight on the side of the spiritual scale and for some reason have not yet had the full measure of their release. But to them I can only say this: be patient. Be patient. Let the Christ work in you and through you to your final and complete redemption, and it will come about. Leave your nets. Stop this fishing for material fish and material remedies and material ways of earning a livelihood, and turn only to one statement in all of his teaching. Only to one statement. If you want to leave it all the rest alone, turn only to one: I am come, that ye might be fulfilled. Trust that I at the center of your being. Cling to that one thing, or the equivalent of it: thy grace, the grace of God in me, is sufficient for me. Cling steadfastly, wholeheartedly to thy grace is sufficient for me. Thy grace. Nothing out here, just thy grace. It'll come. It can't fail. It'll come, and it'll be in time. We'll never lose out, because the Spirit is the true reality of being. All this material sense of existence is only our false sense, only our limited view of the great glories that are in store for us when we've caught that inner vision that we can perceive the Christ where others only see Jesus. When we can perceive the Spirit where others only see matter. And as we catch one little grain of it and rely on it, the second grain will come, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and it may be a slow process. It may be a slow process. It was very slow with me, and it's probably slow with you, but it's a very sure one, and it's a wonderful one when we achieve it. Now let us have a little vacation for a while.
Good evening. This is Joel, continuing the New Washington series, and giving you an Easter message, which I have called the Easter of our lives. It is the day of the crucifixion, and the Master is seated by himself, somewhat away from the people in the courtyard. And outside, the crowd is gathered, outside the gates. These are the people whom Jesus fed when they were an hungered. These were the multitudes that he healed of their diseases, of their sins, of their infirmities. Some of them he raised from the dead. And they gathered now to be sure that he was crucified. The authorities, their authorities, have roused them to forgetfulness of the good that they have witnessed in his ministry, evidently succeeded in convincing them that he meant to destroy their temple, their religion, probably even their God. The fact that they witnessed the healings and experienced them, this is forgotten. All that is remembered now is crucify him, crucify him. Inside, of course, the Roman authorities are much concerned because they have nothing against the man. They have nothing against the teaching. They have no liking for the work of the day, and the Master knows this. The Master knows that on one side he is between the people who have an unpleasant duty to perform and have no desire to do it, but probably feel that they must do it to uphold themselves. And on the other hand, he is meeting the ingratitude and forgetfulness of those whom he has blessed. And so he has the right to do a little thinking, and we have the right to look into his mind and see what he is thinking as he sits there waiting for the inevitable. And I have an idea that he is saying to himself, what a great spiritual victory has been given to me. What a great revelation from on high. So great that I know that the words that I have spoken will never pass away, and that someday men will repeat them, will remember them, and will lift themselves out of the grave of sin and disease and death, just as those words have lifted people out of the same evils today. What a wonderful thing God has done for me. What a wonderful light God has given me. What wonderful grace I received from on high, that I know all things, past, present, and future, and their meaning. With this great light, I can bring healing, consolation, comfort, not merely for those of my present age, but even before Abraham was. Those who existed will receive this light, and unto eternity this light will brighten the lives of men, and someday it will overcome the world of wars, the world of diseases, the world of fears, and the world of sins. Yes, God has been very good to me. God has blessed me. And then, as he turns to the present scene, he must smile and say, with all my success, wherein have I failed? Wherein has been my failure, if there is a failure? Wherein have I failed? Where are those I taught? Where are my disciples? Where are the apostles? Where are the 12? Where are the 70? Where are the 200? Where is my mother? Where are my brethren? Where are those who have been raised from the dead? Where are those who are to carry the message out into the world? Have I so failed that God has given me this great light, and I have not been able to give it even to one of these? I know where his sister Mary is. She is right outside that gate, and she stands by me with love and adoration, as does Mary, she who was taken in adultery. These two, whom I have so little right to love, these two seem to bear my burden with me. But those of whom I have the right to expect devotion, sacrifice, these I have lost. They were my sheep, but I have lost them. Wherein have I failed? Even my mother doesn't seem to know me, or to recognize my work, or to recognize my mission. Even my brothers, little children with whom I grew up, with whom I played, who saw me when my eyes were first opened to the revelation of God, even they seem not to know me. How is it that in all this wide world, none to whom I have poured out myself, my message and my mission, comprehends it? Have I failed? The message hasn't. The mission hasn't, because it came from on high. I know that it is of the Father, because, as I have voiced it before, go show John the things ye have seen, the sick are healed, the dead are raised, to the poor the gospel is preached. I am not wrong about the message. I am not deceived. No one can tell me that this isn't the Christ message, because by their fruits I know it. But what is the matter with me, that I have raised up no one to carry on, no one to carry forth this work? no one to understand it, and not even one to stand by and say to me, "Well done, good and faithful servant." None. And so this master, pondering the great spiritual realities, looking out upon the human world to reason out the lack of receptivity, stands between two powers. The louder the noise grows outside, the louder the clamor for his life, the greater must be the wonderment that in this hour of inevitability no human stands beside him. And somewhere between that moment and the moment when he is led out to the crucifixion, somewhere in that moment the light must dawn in his consciousness of this great truth. And this is the light that enabled him to take the crucifixion, rise from the tomb, and complete his mission in the ascension. The realization that man whose breath is in his nostrils never has, cannot now, and never will comprehend the spiritual message, the mission of the Christ. In that time he must have realized that all attempts to give this word to man whose breath is in his nostrils, to the human world, must result in failure. That always, even those to whom you pour out yourself and give yourself, must be the very ones to turn and rend you. That must inevitably be. Why? Because there is that in the human mind which does not wish to be extinguished. That is the secret. Watch this. There is that in the human mind which does not wish to be extinguished. That is something called I. The I that is human, that boasts of its power, its presence, its wisdom, its understanding, its goodness. That doesn't want to be extinguished. That doesn't want to say, "Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven." That doesn't want to say, "I of my own self can do nothing. The Father doeth the works." Oh no. It wishes to say, "Just think how great is my understanding. Think how great is my spirituality. Think how great is my goodness." And when you present a message to the world that says to the world, "You aren't good, you aren't spiritual, you aren't the Son of God, you must die daily and then be reborn of the Spirit," that is when our dear good ones rise up and present the cross and the nails and the sword. Yes, feed them, and you have the admiring throng. Heal them, and you have them wanting to put the robe on you and the crown on you. But then tell them that they must deny themselves and realize God as the reality of being. Then comes this experience. You know, as the Master ponders this and realizes this, the first thought comes, then did I fail? Did I fail? And there's somewhere deep within his own being that says to him, you couldn't succeed and you couldn't fail because your work wasn't yours and you knew it. That was my work. You were my instrument. You knew that. You told them that if you spoke of yourself, you bore witness to a lie. You told them that your message wasn't yours. It was his that sent you. Now remember that at this minute. You couldn't fail. because you never had a message, and you never had a mission. You were the instrument through which I gave this word of truth to the world. Your part has been fulfilled. Now, in this moment, comes the greatest revelation that you have ever had, and that is this, that all that appears as human experience is but an illusion. And you are now going to prove the highest revelation ever given to this world, that ultimately will be the salvation of the world, that even death is an illusion. Death in its hardest form is an illusion, and the disgrace that goes with it is an illusion, because out of death will come your resurrection and your ascension, and out of the disgrace will come the crowning glory of your divine sonship. How then could you fail? Since in this triumph you bear witness to the great truth of the illusory nature of all evil and of the impotence of the hate, envy, and jealousy of the human mind. All in one experience you annihilate the entire belief that the human mind, with all of its iniquity and all of its wickedness, that the human mind, with all of its ingratitude and forgetfulness, in one experience you prove their nothingness, and you show to the world of the sons of God once and for all that the human mind isn't power. You show the world once and for all that ingratitude, jealousy, envy, malice, regardless of the depth of them, can never be a power, that they can never destroy the life, harmony, or wholeness, message, or mission of divinity. And so it was that when the Master said, "I have finished the work thou hast given me to do," he revealed to the world that he had completed the work of proving that the human mind, with all of its lack of integrity, with all of its deceit, with all of its plotting and all of its planning, isn't a power. That was the conversation that the Master had with himself. That was the conversation and the debate. That was the question and the answer. Why did these men forsake me? Why was my message not received by these men, by those to whom, well, only for one reason, to prove that in the deepest degree, and there is no deeper degree than for a friend to betray his friend, for the student to betray his teacher, for the disciple to betray his master. There is no deeper degree of human iniquity, and yet it is proven in this experience that all of that was not power. Now we have before us the example of this week's lesson in our Easter work, not to celebrate an event that took place 2,000 years ago, not merely to remember an historical experience, but we were given that experience 2,000 years ago so that when we face a world filled with wickedness in high places, not only high spiritual places, but high political places, high commercial places, if you like, wherever it may be, we are called upon to remember first, we have had a lesson of the impotence of human scheming, human planning, human ambition, human will, human degradation, human iniquity. We have had shown to us that the best laid plots of men must go awry. in the face of one individual standing fast in the faith that God itself is our power, God itself is our presence, what difference does it make to us what religious holidays we celebrate in the year, if we do not take from them the principle that is shown forth in the holiday, in the feast, in the festival? For us, the principle is the all. Now, the Master would have been the last one in the world to have asked human recognition or human gratitude for the work he did. But I know that he did expect those whom he gave this message to would stand firm in the faith and be the ones to carry it forward. And out of that I have learned this: God is the bearer of its own message. God needs no human agency. God needs no human Messiah. God needs no human disciple. Whether or not there is a you or a me, whether or not there is a metaphysical or spiritual teacher on the face of the earth, God will deliver to the consciousness of men the healing grace, the healing power, so that it may always be said, these words will not pass away. Regardless of whether or not there is a man or woman on earth to publish them, whether or not there is a man or woman left to carry them, God will itself speak into the consciousness of men and raise up seed, raise up the revelation and the understanding until the leaven works. You see, all of us at some time or other have thought that the carrying of the spiritual message was dependent on a human avenue, and in that we have lost our own healings, because we have accepted the belief that God had to work through person or thing or thought. Now I take you into the high revelation where you must understand that God works in you and through you without mediation, that God works in you and through you without a person, without a thing, and when necessary, without a thought. Never let your salvation be dependent on a man, or on a thought, or on a thing. Never permit yourself to believe that without a book, without a practitioner, without a teacher, without a teaching, without some right thought, that you might lose your demonstration. Watch as the Master, seeing himself surrounded by nobody after the Garden of Gethsemane, in which he finds not one disciple to watch with him 1 hour, standing alone in Christ, standing alone with God, makes the final demonstration without the benefit of practitioner, without the benefit of disciple, without the benefit of human aid or even human thought. Only in the realization of oneness, only in the realization of I-ness does that remarkable experience of resurrection and ascension take place, in which we see what? With every human aid removed, with every human person deserting, nevertheless, I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. I and the Father ascend the cross and descend from the cross, buried in the tomb and walk out of the tomb, and finally ascend above human sight in the realization of what? Oneness, unity, completeness, and perfection. Out of this we must gather that there comes a time in our experience when we are in that courtyard and where we know right well that behind us stands inevitability in one form or another, and before us stands the desertion of everything and everyone upon whom we have placed reliance, and we find ourselves alone with God. And it is in that aloneness with God that we find the spiritual reality of allness and completeness. You can't see this unless you can see that the mission of the Master was not merely to multiply loaves and fishes, or to raise physical bodies from sickness to health, or death to life, but that the mission of the Master was to take us into a new dimension of life, a fourth dimension of life, a spiritual dimension in which we would find that when bereft of these temporal aids, when bereft of even temporal good in any and every form, that right there, the spiritual reality of being was eternal, infinite, omnipresent, and no true thing was lost. Now we come, you see, to the highest phase of the Christ message and mission. And that is the one in which we rise above humanness, above human experience, above improving humanhood, into the revelation and realization of a kingdom of God in which there is no loss, no lack, no limitation, and in which the Master finds not humans to desert him, but angels to bear him up. I bear witness to you that in proportion as your human dependencies depart from you, in proportion as you lose your faith in purely human means of help, that place is taken by angels, guardians sent from on high, from deep within, from the infinite consciousness, and we find a new world and a new life. The only reason that we have the symbolic teaching of a Master deserted by his disciples is in order to show us that wherever our human trust has been, even in the highest, we must be prepared for that desertion in order that we may be prepared for the higher step of witnessing the spiritual aid, the spiritual wisdom, the spiritual angels that are sent to us, that never leave us nor forsake us. Remember, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. But that is not a man. That is an angel talking. That is an angel. That is a guardian. That is God's own witness within your consciousness saying to you that if your mother or your father desert you, which we are told is so in Psalms, though your father and your mother desert you, I will never leave you. I will be with you. Whether it is your mother or father, or Jesus' mother, or his disciples, we now know through this symbolic lesson that there is that which did not desert the Master, and which enabled him to reveal to the world that the desertion of human help is but the elevation necessary to the realization of divine help. Of course, it isn't necessary that we be crucified. It isn't necessary that our friends or relatives desert us, or that we be betrayed. Oh no, that lesson was an extreme lesson to illustrate the fact that we need not place our faith in these human avenues. If we forget and place our faith in the human avenues, one of these days the medicines will not heal, the banks will not loan, and the friends will not stand by. But while we are in the midst of this human experience, through the lessons given us in the Master's revelation, if we begin here and now to understand that here and now, as we begin to give up the dependency on our disciples, on our relatives, on our friends, on our capital, on our investments, then do we find that we are picked up by angels, by spiritual power. Ah, that's it, isn't it? Do you know that there are spiritual powers? Do you know that actually there are spiritual powers which are called angels or guardians or messengers from on high, which are nothing more or less than realizations or feelings of spiritual presence and power within us? That these are more real than the disciples of the outer plane or the friends and the relatives of the outer plane. And that the entire mission of the Master was to reveal to us that there are guardian angels, that there are everlasting arms about us, that there are these unseen presences and powers upon which we can rely with much greater faith than on anything in the visible. What I would like you to see tonight, what I hope you will see, just out of this Easter season unfoldment, is that there are invisible presences and invisible powers, invisible beings, invisible forces that are able to pick us up, but can only do it as we release our hold on the temporal powers. These invisible forces do not reach us and do not take over while we are holding on to that which is visible, finite, and temporal. And only as we release our mental hold on these, only as we release our faith and trust in that which is visible, do these invisible powers take over and reveal to us an inner world of reality. Now remember, the Master said very clearly, my kingdom is not of this world. And in that statement you have your Easter lesson. My kingdom is not of this world. My disciples did not come to my aid. The people I healed and fed did not come to my aid or even to testify for me. But you watch, and you will see the invisible angels, invisible powers that will enable me to walk out of the tomb and will enable me to ascend above all mortal discords. That was the Easter lesson. All of humanhood would betray, all of human powers would leave, but I can call on angels. I can call on angels. Now watch. These angels will pick me up, and these angels will lift me from that cross and will take me from the tomb, and then that will be the glory of the Father's message, because that is what the Father has been trying to say through me, and ye haven't seen it. Have ye eyes and do not see, and have ye ears and do not hear? I am bringing you a message not of greater good in this kingdom, but of powers and of a presence from the invisible kingdom. My kingdom is not of this world. I have overcome this world, but within me is this divine presence, these tremendous forces, and I tell you of them. My message is to tell you that within you is the kingdom of God, not out there in personal dependencies, not out there in faith upon crutches that break, but the kingdom of God is within you. Now I show you my disciples who have deserted me. I show you those I've healed, fed, who desert me. Now I will show you the invisible. Watch its power. When you read the writings of the Message of the Infinite Way, I want you to notice particularly how the emphasis is all on the infinite invisible, how the emphasis is all on developing a consciousness of dependence, if you will, on that which is not seen, on that which is not visible out here. I have witnessed in my own experience that the inner light was only in proportion to my withdrawal from the outer world. Not to leave the world, not to leave its pleasures and joys, but to leave the dependence on it, to leave the faith in person, place, or thing. Perhaps you think that that makes you stand alone. Perhaps you think that in his hour of desertion and betrayal that the Master stood alone. Then let me assure you, you are far from right. Very far from right. The Master never was betrayed and never was left alone except by the unreal personal sense. The Master was always in the company of children of God, on earth and on the cross. At no time in his ministry did the Master walk alone. In his communion on the mountaintop, though to outer sense he was alone, in his own realization of the unreal nature of that outer world, he had his communion with the children of God. He showed that to the disciples, didn't he? On the Mount of Transfiguration. Was he alone? No. The great prophets were right there with him. You may be assured of this, that the prophets were right there with him on that crucifix. The prophets were with him in that tomb. When we seem to be most alone, we are only alone from mortal or material thought. When we seem most alone, we are most heavily engaged in divine company. Every individual in this room can prove for himself that he can't go into a room alone. Oh, let us say that you have gone home tonight and have gone to sleep for 2 or 3 or 4 hours and been awakened, and then get up out of bed and go into another room and be all by yourself for an hour. And watch how you find yourself in divine company, how you lose all sense of aloneness, how you lose all sense of friendlessness, how you lose all sense of lack and limitation. Watch how it is, after you have been refreshed with a little sleep and haven't the weariness of the world on you, that you can go off all by yourself, and within a few minutes, or in some cases within an hour, find yourself surrounded with angels. Find yourself surrounded with the most glorious visions, with the most glorious thoughts, with the most glorious ideas, with the most glorious companionships, and then retire again. One of these days, we form the habit of retiring when we're weary at night and having our good first sleep, and then getting up, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 hours later, and being rested and having the quiet night hours, find ourselves as completely alone as the Master was in his garden, or in the palace grounds awaiting the inevitable. And as we commune with our own inner being, very soon we'll find why the Master could find the great Hebrew masters keeping company with him, why he could stay 40 days alone or 40 nights. He wasn't alone. He was in divine companionship. And that divine companionship we call angels or guardians. And then when you return to the world and you walk the streets and you take care of your business, you begin to learn the meaning of a presence that walks with you, a presence that walks beside you, a presence that walks behind you. It has been my own great joy for a long while to know that there was a presence somewhere behind me that never left me. And then later to have this presence inform me that up to now I have been behind you, but now I walk beside you. And then finally to have this presence say, up to now I have walked beside you, but now I am in you. And you see, that divine companionship that I have had behind me, beside me, and now within me, enables me to say also, there is no such thing as desertion. There is no such thing as betrayal. There is only the unreal picture of an illusory world to fool you and make you believe in the reality of evil power. But one day, when this realization comes, that outside are only these pictures of mortal sense, but that divine companionship, divine protection, divine supply are all emanations of the infinite invisible, are all the expressions of God in your own individual life, and it never leaves you or forsakes you, never leaves you, not since before Abraham was, and not until the end of the world. Only as your attention is drawn away from those whom we humanly believe we have helped or who owe us an obligation, when we withdraw from that thought and say, whatever good I can be to you, let me be, but you owe me nothing for it, only then do you realize that divine compensation and recognition and reward are within. The guardian angel is always with us when we have withdrawn our gaze from the outer. And so, on this Easter, when your attention is drawn to the story of the Master, remember this, that the greatest blessing that has come to the human world has been the denial of the Master by those he fed and healed, and the denial of the Master by his very disciples. Because in that experience we have learned not to trust man whose breath is in his nostrils, not to place our faith in the outer world, but always to turn within and become acquainted with our guardian angel, with our angel of the Lord, with our divine protector, with the very Christ of God, which has been planted in the midst of us since the beginning of all time. Men fashion their kingdoms of temporal power, of gold, silver, brass, and clay. We read of these temporal kingdoms in the 7th chapter of Daniel. We learn here of the finite, temporary nature of the kingdoms of this world. The 34th verse of this chapter of Daniel, we read that a new kingdom shall be set up, which will never be destroyed. This kingdom is carved out of a stone that is cut out of a mountain without hands. This stone destroys all temporal kingdoms and the work of men. Think of this, a stone carved out of a mountain without hands. Is not this the work of God? And the kingdom that shall stand forever, is not that the reign and realm of the Christ? The power that rules not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit? The human life, constituted of gold and silver and brass and iron mixed with clay, is a kingdom divided against itself, and spiritual wisdom alone, the still small voice, can destroy it and reveal the kingdom of immortality under the government of love. As faith and confidence in men, in metals and minerals, is displaced, and the understanding of God as substance replaces material sense, the power and glory of the new consciousness appears. My kingdom is not of this world. The ministering angels within our own consciousness, the impartation of the spiritual word within, this makes for us the safety, security, harmony, joy, and peace of our world. The voice of the Lord, which we understand as the still small voice, is really a power. And you will be repaid in studying the 29th Psalm and learn more about the power that is in the voice of the Lord, in that still small voice, in the invisible presence. Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty, give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaketh the cedars. Yea, the Lord breaketh the cedars of Lebanon. He maketh them also to skip like a calf. The voice of the Lord divideth the flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shaketh the wilderness. The voice of the Lord maketh the hinds to calve, and discovereth the forests. And in his temple doth every one speak of his glory. The Lord sitteth upon the flood. Yea, the Lord sitteth king forever. The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. Aloha, aloha, Joel.